When this generation Silverado launched a few years ago, a lot of folks were rightly disappointed. Not about the exterior, although that was controversial, but mainly about the interior, which was, let's be honest, pretty dreadful. It seemed like it was older than the F-150, which was already 5 years old at that point, and Ram had just introduced the new Ram 1500 with its very stylish and premium interior. For 2022, Chevy has fixed that, and they've given the front end a little bit of a tweak. If you didn't care for the way the Silverado's front end was designed, they have changed it a little bit for 2022, mainly in this area of the bumper. We still have full LED headlights here, but the easy answer, if you're not a particular fan of this style, is to simply get the GMC Sierra, which has everything that I love about the Silverado in a slightly more attractive package, at least to me. Let me know what you think about the look of the Silverado versus the Sierra down there in the comment section. This particular trim is the LT Trail Boss trim, so not a fully loaded version of the Silverado, and this is a really good example of the big changes that they've made to this truck, because even this trim gets the completely redesigned interior. Now, if you are a fan of the older interior, I can't imagine why, you can still get that in the absolute base versions of the Silverado with the updated drivetrain components that we're going to talk about. Moving around to the side, we have the Trail Boss logo, all-terrain tires on this model, and this is the most popular form factor for the Silverado. Crew cab up front, short bed behind. If you are interested in a two-door version of the Silverado, it's going to be the current generation Silverado, but you aren't going to find all the same kind of interior tweaks in every version because you can only get that model in the lower-end trims. You can't get the upper-end High Country or ZR2 trims, etc., in the two-door version of the Silverado. But it's worth noting that if you buy a Ram 1500 and you want two doors, you're going to be getting the old Ram, not the new Ram, which is what compares very well with the interior in this model. The Ford F-150, it is available in two-door, four-door versions, and they're going to be on the current generation platform. But this is the most popular form factor for pickups in America, so pretty much all the trucks you're going to find on the lot are going to have four doors and most likely the short bed behind. For this model year, the engine lineup has been tweaked a bit. The 2.7-liter turbo is now the base engine. It produces 310 horsepower and 420 pound-feet of torque for 2022. That's a pretty significant torque increase over 2021. It is, however, still mated to the older 8-speed automatic transmission, not the new 10-speed that we find behind all of the other engines in the Silverado. Towing capacity with that engine comes in at 9,500 pounds maximum. We then have the same 5.3-liter and 6.2-liter V8 engines that we've seen before. The 5.3 produces 355 horsepower, the 6.2 420 horsepower and 460 pound-feet of torque. Then we have my absolute favorite half-ton pickup engine at the moment. This is a 3-liter Duramax inline-6 diesel engine. It produces 277 horsepower and 460 pound-feet of torque. This is, interestingly, the only diesel engine in a half-ton truck that was designed from the ground up to be a pickup truck engine. The 3-liter diesel that we find in the Ram truck lineup was originally designed for a Cadillac of all things, and the 3-liter diesel that we used to find in the F-150 was originally designed for some Land Rovers, but they were adapted for pickup truck use. This was very clearly designed for a truck from the very beginning, and as a result, it's the only diesel in this segment that has exhaust braking. So if you are going to be towing up to 13,300 pounds, which is what this diesel is now rated for maximum, you're going to want this engine because it's going to be a lot better at keeping that load under control going downhill because you're going to get considerably more engine braking. Now, if you want even more power out of your diesel, you're going to want to wait till 2023 because this engine is going to get a significant revision. About 25% of the internals have been replaced, and that design brings power up to 305 horsepower and torque all the way up to 495, still mated to the same 10-speed automatic transmission. If you're a fan of the way diesel engines sound, which is, trust me, a thing when we're talking about pickup trucks, I have to admit I do love the sound of an inline-6 diesel, then you're going to love this engine because it sounds like the mini-me to the Ram 2500 and 3500 Cummins turbo diesel. You can hear it sounds a little bit more civilized. It is definitely more muted, but it has that distinctive inline-6 diesel rattle. Front seat comfort is unchanged because the basic seat design did not change for 2022. That means that this particular trim still just has a two-way adjustable lumbar support. I do wish four-way lumbar was more available across GM's pickup truck lineup. We have a manual tilt telescopic steering column with a reasonable range of motion. No power pedals. If you're looking for that feature, you're going to find that in other vehicles, just not in this cabin. The front passenger seat does not have the same range of motion as the driver's seat in this model. As with essentially all half-ton trucks, there is a ton of room back here in the rear seats. You can see this front seat's comfortably adjusted for me. I have about a foot of legroom left. Plenty of headroom, even though this model has the moonroof. And that also continues if I scoot over here to the middle seat. The rear bench is definitely very wide. That's certainly a hallmark of American half-ton trucks. Scooting all the way over to the right, this seat's all the way back in its tracks. Again, absolutely tons of room. If I lift up this seat, you can see that we have a small amount of storage space right under there, but that storage area is not collapsible like we do see in some of the competition. Then we have a small open storage area where you can keep your knickknacks. Not quite as much room as some of the competition, but still pretty handy. In case you're wondering, the cord lurking back here is the cord for the engine block heater for the diesel. The socket for this plug is discreetly located right there next to the tow hook up front. You're going to want to use this if you live in a colder climate, especially if your truck is sitting outdoors, but here in California, you absolutely don't need it. Now let's go for a deep dive around the interior, since this is the place where we find the biggest change for the Silverado. We have a pretty standard sized moonroof, no panoramic roof in this model. Height adjustable shoulder belts and height adjustable headrests for the driver and front passenger. This model has the optional leather upholstery, but it's not as soft as some of the leather that you'll find in more expensive vehicles. That's pretty logical because this is a truck and they want it to be a bit more durable. You can see that the bolstering on the seat bottom and back cushion is not terribly aggressive. Moving over to the front doors, we have a decent percentage of soft touch materials. The entire middle section of the door is made from soft touch material, as is that armrest, and then we find hard plastics down at the bottom of the door in order to help improve durability. This model has the optional Bose audio system, and as you can see, that speaker goes pretty low on the door, right where your feet will rub the door as you enter and exit. That's something that I wish pickup truck manufacturers would stop doing, because it really kind of makes the vehicle look old after a while if it's full of mud or just scraped up from shoes, etc. Moving over to the dashboard and the doors, we have lots of premium materials, including a very believable imitation wood trim. This is something that we've seen from GM for a while, and I think they do it really well. You can see the attention to detail in terms of the way those parts fit together, and that sort of imitation effect trim, I guess you'd say there. They're not really trying to make it 100% imitation wood because we have that geometric pattern stamped across the top also. Moving over to the dashboard, we find the first of two glove compartments right here. It's more of a slot style, so you can keep smartphones, things like that, small items inside. Then under that, we have a bin style glove compartment. These are a little bit smaller than the compartments that we find in the F-150 currently. Moving over to the middle of the dashboard, we have the entire reason to buy the Silverado this year over last year. This is a standard 13.4-inch infotainment screen. Now, when I say standard, I'm talking about this particular trim. Base versions of the Silverado, again, still get the older interior that definitely has a very different look and feel to it. Above the screen, there's a small storage cubby right there, and then below the screen, we have a bank of toggles. Those change based on the trim and the features that you have in your truck. The large infotainment system is running essentially the same software that we first found in the Hummer pickup truck. It's based on Google's Android operating system, and it's really a big departure from what we've seen from General Motors in the past. They have kept some of the look and feel consistent, but some of it is definitely not. For instance, we have the big Google Map interface here. This is all being driven by Google Online information. You can see it's very snappy, very responsive. It has live traffic information there. And then we have the ability to do all the sort of Google searches that you might want to do. You can even pull data from your Google account if you've saved those locations right there. The mapping is really well done. There's also a CarPlay interface or an Android Auto interface if you would like to use those as well, but it doesn't use the entire screen. You can see it's just limited to this section right over here. Then on this side, you can get a few different screens that you can scroll through, so you can see the native mapping interface right there while you're Apple CarPlaying or Wazing over here. If we tap this trailer icon, we get the latest version of GM's trailering software. This is a revision of what we've seen in the Silverado for a while. There's a checklist here so you can make sure that your trailer is connected securely. You can select the different trailers there. It will keep track of the mileage, fuel economy, set up maintenance reminders. You also have the ability to have it help you make sure that your lights are connected properly. And then we have a bunch of different camera views. And this is what I really love about the Chevy system, is that we have these really well integrated camera views, including invisible trailer, where you can have a camera on the back of your trailer, and then you can have that view right here on this infotainment screen, so you can see what's behind the trailer. You can also see what's inside the trailer. Bunch of different trailering camera views. You can see the 3 different views right there. The middle weight option is interesting because this does not have load cells in the vehicle like we find optional in the F-150, where it will actually give you a weight of the truck and the tongue connected to it, etc. This is instead using the drivetrain to try and calculate the gross combined weight rating of the entire combination of truck plus trailer, and then let you know if it thinks that you're over that limit. If I go to the home screen and select the camera views, you can also see we have a bunch of different camera views to help you set up that trailer, navigate around your driveway, parking lot, etc. 360-degree camera view, a top-down view for that hitch. Over here we have a back view and a front view, side views, those are really handy. This is an even closer view of the hitch, which is a little bit different than that view. And if you're a fan of dynamic lines, you can have them on or have them off. Also integrated in this software is Google News and Google Podcasts. Those are kind of handy features. There's a Google Play Store for future apps, and then the Google Assistant, which can help you do a wide variety of things. You can, for instance, say, "Hey Google, set the temperature to 71 degrees. And now it's adjusted the automatic climate control. You can also say, "Hey Google, find me a Starbucks." And now it's gone ahead and found a Starbucks there. It's also pulled up the ratings for these things from their database, so you can see that's 4.2 stars, etc. And if you were to search for gas stations or diesel stations, which can be critical for diesel here, let's go ahead and ask it, "Find me a diesel station." You can see now it has pulled up information about that. That is definitely handy, and even pricing information for some of those diesel stations if it's available in the database. Continuing down the dashboard, we again find that row of toggles, more imitation wood trim, the engine start-stop button, trailer brake controller, and the dual-zone automatic climate control. To the right of that, we find 2 USB inputs. Down here, we have lots of storage. We find the console shifter. This is a joystick style, so it always returns to the center. Pull it back for drive, push forward for reverse. That's the unlock button. Parks right over there. You should know that there is no basic manual mode in this vehicle. We just have low. So if I put this in drive, toggle down to low, then you can limit the top gear that the transmission is using, but it's not really a manual mode. Over here we have 2 big cup holders, a slot where you can store your smartphone. There's also a slot right there where you can store your smartphone. And then this one has a Qi wireless charging mat, 2 more USB inputs, and any of the USB inputs up front here can be used to integrate with CarPlay or Android Auto. Reasonable amount of storage here, a little bit smaller than what we find in the Ram or in the F-150. And then behind that area, we find, again, 2 large cup holders. On the driver's side, we find a full LCD instrument cluster with 4 different layouts. This is the clean layout. There's also a digital layout that's pretty similar, but it gives you a lot more information. There's also a progressive layout that gives you some analog style gauges that wrap around the corners of the display. And if you'd rather have dials, you can do that with the classic layout as well. Lots of information can be displayed on this screen, things like turn-by-turn navigation directions, trailering information, off-road information, etc. Here's how it works. If I put the shifter in L, you'll see L is now illuminated, and I go up here to the instrument cluster, you'll see now it says L5. That means it's only using gears 1 through 5. If I pull back on this down paddle, you can toggle it down to limiting, for instance, just to first gear, but you cannot command a specific gear. This seems to be pretty common in full-size pickup trucks for some reason. I'm not sure why we don't just have a manual mode. Out on the paved road, 0 to 60 happened in 7 seconds. That's a pretty respectable score for something with just 277 horsepower. Again, keep in mind that 2023 is going to bring a significant revision to this engine. About 25% of the engine components will be new, and it's going to have significantly more power and a whole heap more torque. The 10-speed automatic transmission, though, is really the key to this diesel engine's performance and why modern diesels feel so good compared to the gasoline counterparts that are available currently. Traditionally, diesel engines with automatic transmissions, the gear ratios just suck, to be honest. Diesel engine with a 3, 4, or even a 5-speed automatic transmission, it's just not appropriate. Diesels have a relatively narrow torque band. This produces all of its torque down at around 1500 RPM. It's very, very low. And even though this diesel engine has a relatively high red line up there around 5000 RPM, it is still lower than the average gasoline engine. And up over about 3500 RPM or so, there's not as much torque going on as there is down lower in the RPM range. So this engine really needs to be kept in the meat of its torque band for it to feel peppy and feel good while towing. And this transmission has tons of gear ratios to choose from. It has 3 gear ratios over 1:1, and the rest are all either 1:1 or down there below it. That means that there's almost always the perfect ratio for this engine to take advantage of. And you'll really notice that in daily driving and in towing and hauling situations. The low-end torque means that we get that instant off-the-line shove that people like, and thanks to the extra ratios, it's able to keep the engine in that torquey band and that's how we get 0 to 60 in 7 seconds. Now keep in mind that the trim level you choose, the options you select, the wheels and tires, etc., those are all going to affect your 0 to 60 time. And there is so much variation available in the half-ton segment that this particular 0 to 60 time only applies to this exact truck, as does the 60 to 0 stopping distance, which was a little on the long side. Keep in mind this has all-terrain tires on it. This one took 138 feet to stop from 60 miles an hour. That is certainly on the long side for the half-ton truck lineup, but if you were to get the regular all-season tires on it, it would certainly stop an awful lot shorter. There is definitely a toll to be paid for the extra traction in off-road and rough road situations that we get with these tires, and that balance is the on-road manner. Handling is also a bit tricky to talk about because of the amount of variation we find in this segment, but I think that this is pretty similar to the F-150 when it comes to the handling, feel, and the amount of grip, as long as we're talking about a similarly configured truck. I do think that the Ram 1500 has a very slight edge here as well, thanks to the air suspension that's optional, or the standard coil spring suspension. It does have a pretty different rear suspension design in the Ram 1500. Rather than leaf springs, it has coil springs in the back, and that certainly improves the handling ability and the feel of the truck when it's empty. Empty pickup trucks definitely have that sort of skittering across the pavement thing going from time to time. We find that to a lesser extent in the Ram 1500, even though you will still experience it. When this generation of Silverado initially launched, I wasn't the biggest fan of its suspension tune, especially on rougher roads like the gravel road that I'm on here, or broken pavement like washboard pavement out on the open highway. The rear suspension especially could become a little bit unsettled, and I thought that the ride quality was just a little bit too stiff, perhaps a little bit too harsh. Now, this is not a 2022 change. They changed this a little bit earlier, but they have updated the suspension tune. So if you first experienced a Silverado or a Sierra right when this generation launched a number of years ago and you didn't care for it, you might want to give it a second chance because they have tweaked it a bit. This suspension tune comes across as more settled than the new Toyota Tundra, but I would say that the best riding pickup truck currently in America is, oddly enough, going to be the F-150 Lightning, thanks to its fully independent suspension. And then a close second would be the Ram 1500 if you check the box for the adaptive air suspension system. Now, that optional air suspension system can be had in a decent number of Ram 1500s, but it's going to increase your cost and it's going to increase your maintenance costs. But it is going to give you, by far, the best quality ride. Bearing in mind that this vehicle has all-terrain tires on it, I measured 70.5 decibels at 50 miles an hour. That makes this louder than average for the half-ton segment, but if you were to get this with all-season tires, then it becomes pretty segment average. Most half-ton trucks are just under 70 decibels because of the isolation between the body and the frame. A body-on-frame truck, the cab where I am, is not the same piece as the bed in the back, and it's not the same piece as the frame where the wheels and the engine and the tires are all bolted to one another. There is a reasonable amount of isolation between the frame and the cab, and that's why these tend to be very quiet. But because all-terrain tires are, generally speaking, noisier than all-season tires, especially out on the highway, you will notice that difference in the cabin. You'll also notice a difference when it comes to fuel economy. Over a week of mixed driving, I've been averaging 24 mpg in this vehicle. That is not only exceptional, it's well above the EPA rating for this truck, but you will still likely see about a 10 to 15% improvement in fuel economy if you choose the all-season tires. One of the things that I really love about this 3-liter diesel is it is incredibly efficient. Out on the open highway, if you set the cruise control to say 65 or maybe 70 miles an hour, it's pretty easy to be averaging just under 30 miles per gallon if you don't get the all-terrain tires. But even with these noisier and less grippy tires that are going to give you a fuel economy penalty, etc., we're still getting way above average fuel economy for a half-ton truck. This is notably more efficient than a Tundra hybrid, for instance. Now, diesel is more expensive than gasoline, and you have to feed this diesel exhaust fluid. So whether or not you will save money, that is a different question from efficiency. And that's how we get to that bladder-busting range of about 550 miles out on the open highway in this truck. Exceptional fuel economy. Bearing in mind that there are a ton of variables to consider, in general terms, this engine should be less expensive to run than the 6.2-liter V8 or even the 5.3-liter V8, which is pretty efficient in the Silverado. So if you are looking to save a bit of money in the long run, you might want to consider this 3-liter inline-6. This also has excellent fuel economy when compared to the 2.7-liter turbo. I actually have been a little bit disappointed in the fuel economy ratings on that 2.7-liter. It has a really good feel out on the road, but it's not as efficient as you might hope. And although you can tow about 9,000 pounds with it, if you live in a hillier area, you're going to want this 3-liter diesel because it's going to give you much greater engine braking than you'll find in that 2.7. In the 2.7, you will be relying on the vehicle's brakes quite a lot. This generation Silverado has always been pretty easy to live with, especially with the diesel engine, as long as you could keep your eyes off of the competition's interiors. That has absolutely been solved for 2022, and the Silverado has one of the best, if not the best, interior in a half-ton truck. I like this interior, especially the touchscreen infotainment system, definitely more than the system that we find in the F-150. The F-150's new screen, even in the Lightning, it's kind of slow and sometimes is glitchy. This is very smooth, it's very snappy, very responsive. It also is more attractive and more feature-rich than the system that we find in the new Toyota Tundra. The Ram 1500, it has a big screen and the dashboard looks great, but this software is better than what we find in the Ram 1500 now. Interior design, I would say it's difficult to choose either way. I like the styling of the Ram 1500's interior, and in the very top-end trims, it feels a bit more premium than top-end trims of the Silverado, but honestly, that's just nitpicking at this point. If you're looking for a new half-ton truck in America, the Silverado should definitely be back on your list. And as I said before, this 3-liter diesel is absolutely my favorite engine. If you're doing a lot of towing, a lot of hauling, a lot of long-distance travel, you should definitely get the diesel engine before you choose the V8s in the Silverado lineup, and I would choose this combination over pretty much everything if that was my main mission for a pickup truck. If, on the other hand, you're daily commuting in it, you want a slightly nicer interior, slightly more comfortable, I do find the Ram 1500 just a hair more comfortable, but now there's a pretty big decision to be made because this infotainment system is better and the style might be more to your taste. Let me know what you think about all that down there in the comment section below. Find me over at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those other social places. And of course, check out some competitive videos between this diesel truck and the Ford F-150 Lightning. You'll find those over on the EV Buyer's Guide channel. There's a link down there in the description. See all of you later.